Welcome to Agape Freedom Podcast. My name is Jeric, and tonight we have a special guest, Genesis. I'm so thrilled to bring him on our podcast. I've been in contact with him for the last couple of months. I love his posts. I love his perspective on the church, not just in Africa, but in the world, like in America. I think we could see that a lot of the movements and gimmicks and all that have been going on in America for the past 100 years may have made its way over to Africa or vice versa. I have learned that America is very influential and very powerful with their evangelists, with their pastors, with their politicians, and that they're pushing, policies. I know the politicians in America, the Republican politicians are pushing policies over in Africa, I have heard, and trying to influence them where, same-sex marriage and all that. So Genesis lives in Africa, and I'm thrilled to have him on there and to get a different viewpoint and different perspective from someone from a different country on this topic on faith healing and the church. So I'm thrilled to have an opportunity to interview him. So let's bring him on. How are you doing, Genesis? Thank you for coming on here.
Hi, I'm doing fine. Thank you for bringing me on.
Of course. I was so excited when you accepted to come on my podcast. I mean, I've seen a lot of your posts on social media, and you have your very deep insight on this topic, and I've been passionate about this probably before I left the faith last year, at least traditional Christianity. Now I don't know where I stand. I'm for everybody, so I'm more agnostic, I would say. I think there is a God, but it doesn't matter. But the point is, when I was a Christian, I kind of had a feeling or that there was a lot of con artists in ministry. This is going back to 2012 when things were. So you seem to be very insightful on this. But before we get started, could you share a little bit more about yourself?
All right. Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing me on. My name is Genesis, like you said. My surname is Iririoma. That would be a little difficult for you to pronounce anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up, in the traditional African church setting. It happened that we grew up in this church family, going to church with my father, and all that. So I grew up a Christian. I was born into Christianity. So gradually, I had some, funny experiences that along the way started making me to begin to do research and try to understand what we have believed and all that. So maybe as we go on, I'll share some of those experiences. I was a former pastor.
Oh, wow.
I pastored before, for years. I did evangelism, even crusades and all that, until I finally left Christianity a few years ago.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. I was not aware that you were a pastor. So you did crusades and all that? Now,
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Were you like a faith healer?
Of course, I did a lot of healing and all that. So I think I'll share about that as we go on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can't wait to hear it, So, so what, like, was there something particular that you experienced, seen, or was there a couple of Bible verses? What was it that led you out of the faith, out of Christianity, to leave Christianity? What did you see? What did you research?
All right. Back then in secondary school, when I was in secondary school, that is the first part of secondary school, because in Nigeria, it's broken into two parts, GS1 to 3 and the SS1 to 3. So at about, I think that should be GS2, I had some strange experiences where my mind, I started asking questions. Like I was asking, like, how did the Virgin Mary give birth to a child? How did she get pregnant? So at that point, I was like, something strange happened to me. I started thinking that I had committed the unpardonable sin. So for weeks and weeks, I couldn't eat. I was disturbed, like I was going to go to hell and all that. So it took me some time to be able to overcome that, to convince myself that I'll be forgiven the unpardonable sin. But down the years, that question kept coming up in my mind, but I have nobody to answer that. The only thing we're told is that the Holy Spirit overshadowed Mary and all that, and all the stories in the Bible and all that. But I was always thinking there's something beyond, what we're being taught in church. Because right from my childhood, I've been a very inquisitive person. I have that kind of mind. I ask questions, trying to find out things and all that. So as I wore on in Christianity, it got to a point that I started seeing that a lot of these pastors were not being true. I started seeing a lot of fake healings, fake things happening and all that. So I went deeper into, studying. At the time, I had a motorbike. I sold my motorbike. I bought books and I started reading, started studying. The more I read, the more I came to understand that there's something wrong with what we have believed. I started questioning the historicity of Jesus, whether he was actually born or not. Then look at the controversies in the Bible, the birth of Jesus, the resurrection stories that are not lining up. All of these questions started coming up. And then when you ask questions, the people we call leaders, when you ask them questions, the only thing they tell you is just believe what you're told. They cannot answer the questions. So all of that made me know that there's something wrong with what we believed, coupled with my experiences in what we call the realm of the spirit too. I started having some experiences in what we call the realm of the spirit, and all that put together, I came to understand that what we have believed is a fraud is not actually true. So, but coming out of it was a little bit difficult anyway, until after some time I had to summon the courage, to come out of it. So all of those things, the things that we're teaching and all that, and those questions that I've had long ago over the years that were unanswered, made me to do more research. When I came across a lot of materials that exposed all of the things that were not being told, I began to realize that we were lied to, and I had no option than to come out.
Now, how old were you when you went into ministry?
Okay, I think I went into full-time ministry at about 2012. That was when I went into ministry. I actually came out fully 2022. That was when I actually came out. But I've been on the sideline, I stopped doing a lot of things, and all that. Just watching to see when I can actually, declare, because in Nigeria, you face a lot of persecution and all that. As I'm here now, if I tell you what I'm facing, over here, everybody, they will ostracize you. They will see you as, something is wrong with you. You backslided. It's not funny at all. So to come out is very difficult. But I was able to summon the courage in 2022 to take a firm stand and say, I'm done, and I'm done with it.
Now, what was it like to leave your faith and with those around you? How do they treat you?
Yeah, at first, like my immediate family, they were so concerned. They were like, something has gone wrong with me. But right from my childhood, I've been a very stubborn child, like not stubborn in doing bad things, but in taking decisions and standing firm by my decisions, no matter what happens. So I had to go into isolation for some time. I had to isolate myself from everybody that I knew.
Wow.
It was a very tough period for me You had to cope with depression because you have like anybody to talk to reason with you and all that. So I had to most of the time lock myself in and encourage myself. So I like reading, I like studying and all that. So I made reading, studying my friend and all that. So that helped me go through the tough time. But gradually some of them are beginning to understand some of the things that I've been telling them, and now they taking a more liberal approach toward their relationship with me right now.
Good, that's good. So how long did you kind of have to hide out? Like,
Okay, like for me, at about that 2022, I started getting a little acceptance from my immediate family at about just last year, 2023, just about a year. It got to about a year before some of them could say, okay, that's his life, let's just take him for who he is and all that. But at first they were like, no, no, this can't be. You my brother, why would you do that and all that? You've lost your salvation and all that kind of thing, you know. So it was about a year before some of them started, though not all of them anyway. And some of them, I haven't even told some of them my stand. So I'm still hiding it from some who I know that they will not take it lightly with me for now, until maybe things get better with me. Like here in Nigeria, your economic status, determines a lot of things. By the time they see that you are growing economically, they begin to say, okay, maybe it's working for him, kind of thing. So we can just take it like that.
yeah, I mean, I've gone through, maybe not the same as you, but when I grew up in the faith, and we were I have 10 siblings. Both my parents are married like 50 years, just a brief.
Mm,
And my mom died of cancer 2018. My dad 2020, 2 years apart. But so
yeah,
when I kind of left the faith, like I I really at the point is I don't trust the Bible. I don't think it's reliable. I'm kind of cultural Christian. I hope Jesus existed. I hope there's a heaven, and I hope there's a God, right? And that's fine. But when I left the faith, I just want to share briefly about me, because it's really about you. I went through a similar thing. Like, I started deconstructing a year ago, and I have 10 siblings, and I have a twin sister, a couple older brothers. A brother who's like a couple years younger than me, early
yeah,
30s he is. I'm 41. And so they started, like, my twin sister was telling me I'm demon possessed. I'm attacking the church. And this was September this past year. I'm this.
mm,
And then my family started kind of cut back on talking to me. And then I stopped talking to them because they weren't very nice about my deconstructing. And then they thought I was like doing like bitter about my parents, of how they were strict growing up, or used about my dad. Like, it was like a getting back at my parents. They're dead. Like, it was like a, I don't know what they were thinking. They came up with all these theories and assumptions that wasn't even true. I
yeah,
was dead on in the faith for 15 years, looking for the evidence, reading books. I thought I had it all together, of every answer, how the Bible is reliable, the Gospels are reliable, and I could
yeah,
go through it, how we could trust it, their eyewitness testimonies, blah, blah, blah. I
yeah,
thought I had it like set in brick, like going back to 2022. And
yeah,
then I realized that after a while, things weren't making sense. So it was
mm,
nothing. I didn't do anything in spite of anybody. And it wasn't against my family. It wasn't against my siblings. It's just some things weren't adding up, as I've shared on
yeah,
my podcasts. And I'm just sharing that briefly with you, because I don't want to talk about myself. But yeah, it's kind of like, it's spite of, like, I'm doing this on spite. No, it isn't. Like, you start seeing things, start reading things, you start putting this here, this there. And in the history of Christianity in America isn't pretty. I'm sure, I don't know the history in Africa, but I know
um,
we had slaves, right? I don't know if you know about America. Blacks were slaves, and it was
yeah,
down south in Southern America. There's Christians that owned slaves, and they even used the Bible to justify owning slaves. and
Yeah,
Germans preached on it. And same thing with segregation, blacks and whites. Christians
yeah,
pushed it. It wasn't until the 1970s, couple big universities allowed whites to come in, no, but blacks to come in with whites. And the reason they did
yeah,
that was because the government started, I think, messing with their tax exemption, something, if they didn't do that. So, no, it's not pretty. Christianity is not that pretty. It is not that holy, and it's not a sin nature. It's just
true.
human. They're humans, and they're claiming to have a Holy Spirit in them, and they're claiming to be different, and they're really not. And people really
Yeah,
don't change. So, if you want to share on that, you could explain it, whatever.
yeah. Thank you for that. You look at the history of Christianity in Africa. Christianity actually came to Africa through especially West Africa, where I am, Nigeria, first through the Portuguese, then the British consolidated it through the Anglican Church, and then the Roman Catholic Church followed. So these were the two dominant churches, that were in West Africa until in the around 70s that the American evangelical Christianity started flooding into Nigeria, where we now have different denominations, different kind of churches all over the place that broke from the Anglican and Catholic churches. Because what actually happened in the 70s was that the some people within the Anglican Church believed that they had the Holy Spirit, kind of thing, because they started being influenced by teachings from American evangelists and other European evangelists and all that. So they believed they had the Holy Spirit, and then the Anglican Church didn't want all of that, all of those manifestations that, slain in the Spirit and all that, falling under the anointing, those kind of things. They abhorred those things. So these people had to form breakaway groups, and all that, and they started other churches. And in Nigeria, I don't know whether you've heard of Pa Elton. His name is Pa Elton. He was a missionary in Nigeria. He was a major influence to what happened. They call it revival that took place in the 70s that led to all of these churches all over the place today. The truth remains that the church was instrumental to slavery, was, supported slavery. Missionaries that came to Africa, they were brought in to teach the people to be subjective and all that. That was the purpose why, they brought the missionaries in. So they built schools, and the schools they built were not to actually educate the people, but only to make them to be able to read and write so they can be able to serve very well as better slaves. In fact, it affected a lot of families because Africans were majorly farmers. So some people were offered opportunity to get scholarship, abroad, go and study abroad and become a clerk in the office. And the salary was, kind of maybe lucrative. So some families will sell their lands and, sell the stuff to send their children abroad to go get that because they felt that was better and all that. So we started losing everything, agriculture and all that. That's the reason why you see that today African countries are dependent on so much aid from the West, which is not supposed to be. Whereas all of the wealth that is going to the West is coming from Africa, it's coming from here. The gold, the uranium, copper, all of the minerals, they're here. Oil, think about it. All of them is in Africa. But, when the mind is corrupted, it will be difficult for you to harness anything. So Christianity was part of the strategies that was used to corrupt, the minds of our people, to make them not to be productive and all that. So the effect is still there today. We see it all over the place, where you see these pastors, they're just like, most of these pastors are like puppets in the hands of the government. They're just puppets. Like in Nigeria, there's something that is happening here that we're trying to advocate against, which is pilgrimage to holy lands and all that. The government, like recently, budgeted about 90 billion naira for a subsidy for pilgrims that are going to Saudi Arabia for pilgrimage. And then student loans, they budgeted only 5 billion naira. 99 billion, but 90 billion for pilgrimages to holy lands. And then 5 billion naira for student loans.
Wow.
Now, pilgrimages to holy lands and student loans, which one is more important? So you see that religion is a big problem here in Africa and all that. So looking back, the church that I grew up in, what the founders, they were part of those who broke away from the Anglican Church and all that. They founded their own. At some point, they had some issues. They also broke into different factions too. So today, the church I grew up in, they have more than 5 factions already as at this time. So, and these people, they claim to preach, the life of Christ as exemplified in the Bible. But none of these things are in what they tell us from the Bible. So that makes you know that, these people, they're actually fighting for themselves. Just like Christianity from the beginning. If you study the history of Christianity, you know that Christianity was not to serve, the purpose of actually helping man to become better, but to serve the purpose of the elite who brought Christianity to be able to control the people and rule them, any way they want. So today, the effect of religion in Africa is really, really telling on us. And I don't know, somehow that's why some of us, are coming out to speak and to stand and to make sure we enlighten people to open their minds to understand that this thing, if it happened in the West, that at least a huge percentage of people in the West are enlightened, and that's what I think is making Western societies better than ours. So if we have more people that are enlightened, then I think it will be better here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's still a lot of Christians over here, but it definitely is interesting. I've noticed that as well, that when you go to the Gospels, like over just last couple months, because I know the Bible as well pretty good, and you start to notice that, like, when it comes to, like, over in America, we have, like, Republican Party, Democrat Party, and the Republican Party and politicians are supposed to be more Christian. But a lot of the policies they're for, and Christians have warned them for, Jesus never spoke about. Like, it's like abortion or it's same-sex marriage, but they're for the rich. They support the rich. They support the they don't want to help the poor. And you look what Jesus was for. This Jesus was for what? Like you just mentioned, kind of briefly. He was for the poor. He was for the needy. He was to set the oppressed free. He was for everything that is not happening around the world. Like, they want you oppressed. And they want you entangled. They want you to keep giving money. They want you to like, I just haven't found anybody that's actually preaching what Jesus actually said. Now, not saying it exists or didn't exist, but when you go to the gospel alone, they're not preaching that message. And I don't think majority of people in America, like the Christians, I don't think they like Jesus or the Gospels, when you really dig into it, because they're not for that. It's about controlling people. Jesus' gospel is about basically giving you freedom, if that makes sense, and giving you the ability to choose what's right or wrong, I guess, if that makes sense. So, yeah. I noticed that as well. So, do you think, because I saw a documentary last year, it was called The Family, where there's a lot of politicians in America, a couple of politicians in America, that's been going to Africa trying to push these Christian policies and, like, getting them in Africa, like the same-sex marriage, being against gays. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, during the time of, I think around 2013, 2014, during time of President Goodluck Jonathan of Nigeria, the same-sex bill, I think during time of President Obama, same-sex bill was before the National Assembly in Nigeria. And then what happened was that the northern senators, they were the ones that voted against it, stepped it down. The southern senators, who were Christian, majority Christian, they supported it because the pressure from the United States to do that, not only in Nigeria, the whole of Africa, Uganda and all that. I think it's Uganda that actually enacted the law against it. So there's been pressure from the United States, over the years for that bill to be signed. It was almost signed during the time of Goodluck Jonathan, but the northern Nigeria, the population of Muslims in Nigeria is slightly more than that of Christians. Like it's like something of 40, 46, 44 or 50, 50 kind of thing. So they are more, and they have more representation. The Northerners have more representation in National Assembly. So for any bill to scale through, they must support it overwhelmingly for it to go through. And you must have, I think, two-thirds of majority to be able to pass any bill. So that was what happened that time. They stepped it down. But they've been kind of like, some people are trying to resurrect it, but they've not actually given it a shot again until now. But we wait to see what's going to happen. So the influence of America on Nigeria, especially politically, is very strong. I remember during the time of Buhari, I don't know whether you heard of Buhari, the president before this one, Muhammad Buhari. He actually tried to make sure that Nigeria imports directly from China. So using the currency of China, the yuan, to exchange with the naira directly. Because whatever we buy from China, we buy it in dollars. Mm-hmm. So you buy in dollars. And the president said, that can be, we should buy in the currency that we're trading with. So he proposed that bill. It worked for some time, and then he was called to visit the White House. And when he came back from the White House, that was the end of that. So today that died. We're buying in dollars again. So the influence of American politicians on Nigeria is very, very strong, especially when it comes to that same sex. They still putting pressure on African nations to actually relax the legislation. Most of these African nations are made up of majority Muslims who oppose that, with every fiber of their being and all that. So for it to scale through, you have to find a way to water down the influence of the Northerners. And that, I think that is one major thing that is holding it back. If not, the church in Nigeria and Africa, I don't think they are that strong morally. They are not strong enough to actually resist it. They're not really strong enough to resist it, save for the Muslim influence in Nigeria.
Wow. Yeah, I saw that, and I'm like, wow. So yeah, the politicians in America, they make me very angry sometimes, and stuff like that. So so I'm gonna move on to another topic. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Now I've noticed there's like I like to call them con artists. I don't know if some faith healers know that people aren't really getting healed, or if they're just narcissistic, or I don't know the whole ideal, but I call them con artists because they kind of are. Yeah. Because my what I've learned in my life, and when I became a Christian, was I wanted to, when I became a Christian on my own. I was growing up in a Christian home, like 2008, came on my own. I wanted the truth. I wanted the truth. I needed evidence. I needed this. I'm not just going to say something, and I have said things and it being wrong, but especially when it came to healing. If somebody says they're healed, I would think I would go follow up with them to see if they're actually healed. Because if I'm here praying over people, right, and they're saying, "Oh yeah, I'm healed," well, I should be making sure they're healed. Because if this is really working, this is good news. Then maybe I could go in the hospital, right, and heal people, right? But that is not what's happening regarding faith healers. I mean, do you
Yeah,
want to talk
like
about that?
what is happening? Yeah, what is actually happening? A lot of people don't understand it. What is happening is this, because I'm going to talk from experience too, because I was also praying for people to get healed. And even in my family, I still have evidences of healing till today. My younger brother, even myself, I pray for myself and I get healed. Now, the thing is this: when you talk about prayer, what we actually call prayer
Hmm.
is actually engaging the energy that is in you, because I discovered something, that this body has to a level self-healing mechanism
Hmm.
that you can activate. I think they call it metaphysical healing. You can actually activate it to an extent. It works to an extent. There are limitations and all that. Now, what happens is, this thing is not reliable, totally reliable. It works maybe 1 in 10, and all that, or
Hmm.
2 in 10, once in a while. That's how it works. So, but these people are trying to make merchandise of it.
Hmm.
So they make people believe that it happens all the time, that it can happen all the time. We cannot rely on miracles,
Hmm.
because miracles are just things that happen maybe 1 out of 10 and all that. For a population of I think about 8 billion people in the world, or more than that, 1 out of 10 kind of thing, once in a while, it's not going to work. So
Hmm.
we have medical science and all that. So instead of for instance, in Africa, we don't have good hospitals. It's a major challenge in Africa. Instead of investing in this infrastructure, and all that, people are busy building churches all over the place, announcing faith healings, where people come in and they don't get healed. There are some cases where I know, yes, we can have actually 1 or 2 genuine healings, because I've seen genuine healing. Yes, of course.
Hmm.
I can bring my younger brother to come and testify. My family, I've seen that. But it doesn't happen all the time. I must be sincere with you. It doesn't happen like that all the time. It happens once in a while. And
Hmm.
how it happens, I came to understand that when your energy kind of like connect with the energy of that other person, and then the vibration gets to a particular level, then some changes can occur, and then healing can actually take place. But it's
Hmm.
a very rare occurrence.
I
So it
believe
doesn't
it. It's like
happen to.
it's like positive thinking. Like you could think, because sometimes if you're like they say like over here, I know if you're very stressed, they say a lot of stress related like illnesses. It's mostly stress related illnesses people go visit
Yeah.
the doctor for. So if you're very stressed out, you start feeling pain. You start, but yeah. So there's truth to what you're saying. Definitely.
Yeah. So those kind of things can happen once in a while, but it is now being used because they're making merchandise of it. And
Hmm.
why it is worse in Africa is because of the poverty in Africa. The poverty is so strong that people are just looking for a way to survive, looking for
Hmm.
solutions. For instance, people can go to the hospital, because here we do not have. I think in US you have healthcare system
Hmm.
that enrolls people, and then you can even go in for surgery and all that without actually paying so much for it. But here, you pay for everything, kind
Oh
of.
well.
And the health system, the enrollment system, doesn't cover many things. You go to the hospital, and then the only drugs they can give to you is Panadol. They tell you that's what your health insurance covers. So Panadol cannot do an operation and all of those
Hmm.
kind of things. So healthcare is kind of like, over the roof for the people. So people rely on faith healers, to get
Hmm.
healing. And then these people are now taking advantage of the situation to make money from these people. Like, if you check my Facebook wall, I posted one of the con artists that is advertising soap to make people billionaires. They're going to bait with the
Hmm.
soap and they're going to become billionaires. Where does that happen? How can that happen?
Hmm.
Somebody, buying the soap from the pastor, he prays over it, and then you go bait with it, and then before you know, you start making money. That kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
So they're taking advantage of the people,
Yeah.
and the con artists are so many and all that. Talking about the like you said, some the historicity of Jesus and all that. For me, I have come to understand and know from study that Jesus didn't really exist and all
Mhm.
that. But even if we agree that Jesus exists and then we look at the Bible, what is in the Bible is different from what we're seeing in reality.
Yeah, definitely. Oh
Very,
yeah.
very different,
Oh,
and all that. So these people, they making merchandise of the people through using their ignorance and using already established structures, because Christianity is like an already established structure
mhm,
that anybody can just come in and start doing anything with it.
mhm.
And the only way to stop it is if we have a responsible government. For instance, how can a government that is sponsoring pilgrimages to the Holy Land or whatever, to Israel, to Saudi Arabia, how can they actually stem this tide? They cannot. Like I made a post today, I said, these kind of con artists, if we are, in a government that works, if we have a government that works, they should be in jail,
Mhm.
for lying to the people, collecting
Oh
their
yeah.
money and deceiving them. I know that kind of a thing cannot happen in America where somebody is selling soap for people to prosper.
Mhm.
I believe the person will be arrested, for defrauding people and all, because people who baited and did not prosper will surely come out and say, I baited the soap, I bought it for so and so amount, and it didn't work for me. For in Nigeria here, it is the pastors that will use police to intimidate you. They will arrest you and intimidate you and say you are defaming them. And
Mhm.
then because you don't have, much money to fight them in court, even when you have money to fight them in court, they have people in government that are supporting them. And so they'll suppress the case, they'll adjourn cases up and down. Come tomorrow, before you know, they put you in jail. So a lot of people stop talking and saying, okay, let's
Mhm.
just leave them to be.
Mhm.
So it's really a huge problem, in Africa. A lot of them are building gigantic, structures today with money they collected from the people through tithes and offerings. That these people are not seeing the blessing.
Mhm.
Most of the people are not seeing any blessing, but they keep going to the church because they've not had any other alternative. They've grown in this thing. And then, like what we talked about, the stigma and what you're going to go through, the depression you're going to go through if you decide to leave.
Mhm.
So that is why one of the things we're trying to do is to raise a community of people all around the place in Africa, so that anybody that is willing to come out of this thing, you have is kind of support system. You have
Sure.
people who already have survived, coming out to help you and support you. So most of these people, like I said, they are current artists. They're taking advantage of the people because, like I said, the healings and all of that doesn't happen the way they promote it. It's
Mhm.
just energy vibrations that can actually cause healings, in some cases very, very rare.
Yeah, definitely. I know I've noticed there's hypnosis. You know what hypnosis is?
Yeah,
A form of hypnosis too. I guess when you have a lot of faith, you want something to happen. You with the music playing, like in America, I'm sure they do it over there. They have this music playing, and the faith healer going around, and somebody they tell you if you don't have faith, you're not going to be healed. So they start talking themselves into like, I'm going to be healed. I could be healed, and then they just say they're healed, and they're really not. And there's been stories where months and weeks later, somebody ended up dead because they stopped taking the medicine, or they
yeah,
stopped going to the doctor. They thought they were healed, and it was just a big money scam. And as you mentioned, it's what I found interesting when I actually kind of deconstructed from my faith in Christianity, where Jesus told again, not saying it exists, it doesn't exist, but going to the Bible again, using the Bible, what these people claim to believe, right? He actually
yeah,
told the disciples to go out go throughout the world and what don't bring money and don't ask for money, basically, right?
yeah,
Freely you give, freely you receive. So that, and then
yeah,
Jesus even preached further that I said if you're it's hard for a rich man to enter heaven. Then he even said that you can't love money and love him. As you picked up and mentioned a few times here, in reality, they're not preaching what Jesus preached, right?
Yeah.
And
True.
they're all about money, which
Yeah.
technically Jesus wasn't if they claim to be following them. And same thing in America, it's all about money, all about giving like money to the pastor. Like one of the quotes I hear sometimes, and I'm sure you heard too, is like they'll be like, oh, give money to God, right? Pastors be telling the congregation to give, your money to God, worship God that way. Well, the
Yeah.
oxymoron is the pastor's not God.
Yeah.
So you want to share anything on that?
Yeah, like what I tell people nowadays, one of my campaigns is I tell people that if a pastor tells you to give money to God, that God needs money, that give to God, ask him for God's account number so that you send him money directly, because
Yeah,
that is the same thing fraudsters do.
I should I
you
should
know,
do that with a pastor friend of mine. I say
yeah.
friends with
Give me God's account number. I'm going to send it to him. He needs you. You said God needs the money. You are not the
Oh, that's
one.
great.
So I should send it to God. Because why would God send you to represent him
Mhm,
when I'm there? How are you better than me? Why would
mhm,
God choose you, to come and tell me to give money to him? Why wouldn't he tell me directly? And you say, even the Bible says that, everybody is God's children. We are
mhm.
all created in God's image after his likeness and all that. So if we all equal before God, why would God choose somebody to come and tell me to give him money? All the time he comes, pay tithe and all that. And most Christians don't even know their Bible, that
Yep.
the progression between, the times when tithe started. Today, there is nobody on this earth that is a Levite. And so
Mhm,
nobody is supposed to collect tithes. Any pastor collecting
yep.
tithes is a criminal. Is a
Yep.
criminal. Because none of these people, they are Levites. That was for Levites. And the reason why they gave them tithes was because they were like orphans. They had no inheritance. When land was shared, they were not given. So they were like widows and orphans who had no inheritance. So the only thing that was to be done for them, and tithing, offerings, and all that were like a social welfare scheme. Israel was not a church, it was a community. Like, for
Mhm,
instance, a society like America, there's a social welfare scheme for those who are less privileged and all that. So it was a social welfare scheme where 10% from the produce, it wasn't even money, it was agricultural products, because you plant your crops. For instance, you're buying 3-year period, you harvest. When you harvest,
mhm,
you are told not to forget the less privileged, because if you don't take care of those people, they become
mhm.
the adversary, they become the robbers that we talked about in Malachi. So they
Yep.
don't even preach it for them. Because when you don't take care of people, you have armed robbers, you have criminals, thieves, and all that. But when you have a social welfare system in place that takes care of these people, they wouldn't want to steal because they are taken
Mhm,
care of. Most people go into crime because they don't have enough. They don't have food
mhm.
to eat, no place to stay, and all that. So how do they get money? And the system, is choking them, so they have to find a way to steal from somebody. But if these people are taken care of, that was the system that was,
Mhm.
introduced at that time. But even Israeli leaders, they corrupted it. If you read Deuteronomy 14, it is the individual that decides what to do with the tithe. If you read it from verse 1 down, from verse 26, you will see that you can even buy strong drink with the money of tithe, to drink and be merry and share it with people around you. And you are told not to forget the Levite that is within thy gates, because that period, the Levites were staying in different camps, in the place, because they were camping. So when they built the temple, the leaders said, bring all the tithes to the storehouse. They said so. No, God told them. They were the one. They said, God said, bring all the tithes to the storehouse, because they've now built, like a temple where they can now be able to monitor everything. He said, bring
Mhm.
it there. But before, it was the people that were distributing the tithe the way God leased them.
Mhm.
But now they said, bring it to the storehouse. So then corruption increased
Mhm.
because they had to share it the way they like it and all that. And in Malachi, the priests were the ones that Malachi 3:10 is about, because they
Mhm.
refused to do the right thing. The priests were to even give their own 10% out of what they received. so that the widows and the orphans can be taken care of and all that. So all of these things, these pastors, they don't teach these things. They only tell you are robbing God, you're robbing God, pay your tithe and all that. And tithing was not 10% of somebody's salary. It was agricultural produce that you plant. It was not even a yearly thing. It was 3 years. There was a yearly tithe anyway, depending on the kind of crop you produce. There were crops that yield after 1 year. There were crops that yield after 3 years. So at the end of the harvest, there is the one of 3 years, there's one of 1 year. Then you bring your tithe to the storehouse where the priest will decide what to do with it and all that. So it was a social welfare scheme and not giving money to any god. So today I tell them, ask the pastor for God's account number, because these people, they are thieves. Yeah, they are stealing from the people, and they don't pay taxes. They don't pay taxes.
I agree.
They don't pay taxes because they say the money belongs to God. Yeah. You see that? So it's a big problem. So much money is in their hands. It's not entering, it's not in the economy because they're not paying taxes from the money. And these people, the money these people are giving to them, they pay taxes on this money. They give the money to them. They don't pay taxes on them. So like here in Nigeria, there's something I'm trying to do. I'm trying to work with some civil organizations and all that, so that we can start pushing for a bill to make sure that these churches and mosques and all that begin to pay taxes, because we are not seeing the God they're giving the money. They are the ones spending the money. We see the lavish life they're living. We see what they're doing with the money. So where is the God spending the money? And they say it's God's money. They're giving the money to God. But we see them spending the money.
Yeah.
So they should pay taxes on it.
And I agree. Sadly, we see that a lot. Like, and what I've learned is in like some of these churches, like over in America, the big mega churches, like people will go to ask for help financially, or they're having a hard time. And I went to a local church that I know the pastor well, that I used to go as well. She went there. She was a single mom, and she still is a single mom, and she has like 2 kids and going through a hard time financially a couple of years ago, and asked if they could help her. And it's a big, like 1,000 people. They have a lot of money. Their son is preaching prosperity gospel at his own church, and has his own little small jet, a plane or something just bought. And so they have the money, and they told her to go get help from the government, which over in America, the government helps, like maybe some like food stamps, it's called, whatever. You could get some help from different things, but they refuse to help her. And so they're bringing in all this money, and they're not even really helping. Now and then they have food drives and this and that, but it's sometimes expired food or something like that. And I agree with you. They're thieves. They're stealing the money, and then they make people feel guilty. And again, they tell us, oh, we're not in the Old Testament, we're in the New Testament. That's under the law. And you start realizing they're using the law, which is the tithe, to get people to give them money. And you said we're not under it.
Yes. When it favors them, when it favors their interest, their greed, they bring in the scriptures from the Old Testament that favors them. Then the one that doesn't favor them, they strike it out. They tell you that, Christ didn't abolish tithing. But did Jesus collect any tithe from anybody? There's no record that he collected any tithe from anybody. He rebuked the Pharisees according to the Bible.
Even said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, taxes, right?
Yeah. So if Jesus didn't take any tithe from anybody, why would you claim to be following him, that you're following in his footsteps, be collecting tithes? It means you are not a follower of Jesus at all.
Yep.
So they're not even following Jesus that they claim to follow, because, yes, Jesus never did any of that.
Yeah, you're right. They're not following Jesus, and that's what I've been saying on my Facebook. They're whatever benefits himself. And then if you have these hard questions, I've learned, they gaslight you. You know what gaslighting is? I don't know if you're doing that, but they basically come up with an excuse or ignore what you're saying, or they could, they find a reason why. Whatever. The point is, like, sometimes there's no purpose to even ask the question anymore. Like I know a friend of mine. I went to high school with this guy, and he was at a faith healing crusade a couple miles up the road from me, where church I used to go to. And he went up there, and he was never a Christian really. I think he was just testing it out. He had faith in God, and it's in
Uh,
video, and on a video, and YouTube actually. And
uh,
he claimed he was healed. So I messaged him like a week ago, and he goes, because he was in a car accident last year. I'm like, I heard you were in a car accident. Like this was this week actually, and this was in the Faith Healing Crusade was a month ago. I'm like, I heard
uh,
you were in a car accident. How are you feeling? Oh, my neck or something. I think he said is feeling better. My my mouth, my cheek, or mouth, whatever here. He said something like is there something wrong. So he never really was
uh,
fully healed. And then the
yeah.
evangelist said he was healed, and I'm gonna.
You know what they do? Let me tell you something they do. What they're doing is this. You know, they most of them they have huge TV revenues from the
Mm-hmm,
miracles that are displayed on TV. So they manufacture all kinds of miracles and all that
mm-hmm,
to get those revenues. I remember in Nigeria, that's mostly what they do. Like there is one of them in Nigeria that just prays. He prays and prays. He has this prayer platform. The movie he makes billions, from YouTube through that avenue because he runs almost 24/7 live stream.
yeah,
People praying from all over the place. He even has people praying from all over the world and all that. So they know these things. And the ad revenues because for you to have much followership, you have to give the people content that will make them to be glued to your channel or your TV
mm-hmm,
station. So it's either you are preaching what they like, to listen to, because the people who own the station, they will tell you that you have to give the people content.
mm-hmm,
So they have to now begin to make sure they manufacture miracles every service. They must give prophecies every service. Like they have formats they use right now. For instance, they have people that collect information from people that they use for prophecy.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes when you're visiting, they will tell you go to the altar, kneel down there and pray to God. While you are praying and supposedly talking to God about your problem, there's something recording your prayer. And then the preacher is hearing, maybe you're praying, God, heal me of this cancer. And then the
mm-hmm,
preacher is hearing it in his office. And then he comes out and say, there's somebody here, you so and so, you are having cancer, come out and all that. So they are able to use a lot of gimmickry to,
mm-hmm,
to get this thing going and all that. And some of them, they go to the church of the host where they're going to preach, and they ask him for data. They call it data. Give me data. What data? He gives the person addresses, names, and
yeah,
numbers and all that. So, and that's why most times in crusades and programs, they bring out so many forms for people to fill. Some of the forms that are filled, they're used for prophecy and all that. So they had to, produce a lot of content to be able to get, the revenue going, because people like, sensationalism and all that. So when you give them like there's one that is late now that died some years ago in Nigeria. That was one of the biggest televangelists in the world. He actually has so much ad revenues, from his television ministry and all that. So every day miracles were going on, every day and every day. I have people there's a young man that the mother took him there for healing. He came back the same. He was prayed for. He didn't get healed. He came back the same. Till today, his condition has gotten worse because he was having some, mental
wow,
problems. So the mother took him there. They stayed in a hotel, took him to the church. They prayed for him, and they were like, "Oh, he has been healed," and all that. And then he came back. When they came back, he stayed for some time, and the problem returned. And then today, he's worse. I know him in person. His name is Abraham. So the problem is worse as we speak. So these people, all they do, for instance, the impulse of the moment, they use it against the people. For
mm-hmm,
instance, somebody that has not been able to walk for some time, and then he looks around, the crowd is cheering and all that, he will want to impress them. So they box you into a corner. They put you in a situation where you kind of say no. Like some prophecy they give, when you see the people, you look around, everybody is watching, and you're like, will I disgrace this pastor? Some people are afraid, and then when they ask you, your name is John, you would agree, because even though your name is not John, you're going to agree because you don't want to disgrace him, in front of the crowd. The world is watching, like, you agree with everything. You say, you ate rice yesterday. You say, yes, sir, and all that. So people are like, how did he know? Prophetic general and all that. So, and all the hype, they bring in the music, the pageantry and all that is just packaging. Like people say, when Christianity came to America, it became an enterprise. And when it came to Nigeria, it became institutionalized, became an enterprise. Everything together that it has been in every other place, it became that in Africa and all that. So it's just a business strategy that they're using to move it, because I see it as a business, that's what they're doing, and they're making a lot of money from it. So they all con artists that use all of these strategies, to get TV viewership and make more money from it.
Yeah, definitely. This is my last topic, and then we'll wrap it up for this podcast.
Right.
I don't know if you're aware, but over in America, there's like these million-year faith healers. They're like, go to a church, they put a picture of like Africa children up there. Oh, do you want to sponsor them? And people start giving money and this and that. And then what I've learned through like documentaries and different things I've watched is maybe 5% of the money would actually make it over to Africa. And then the ministry keeps 95% of the money. Or they're telling the congregation, oh, we're building a church, a school over in Africa. Could you want to donate money? And they go to different congregations. And again, most of the money most of the money stays with the ministry, and barely any even goes over there. And they've been investigated, some of these ministries, over the last 30 years, and on television by documentaries done by news hosts or whatever. And they investigated, and they found out there's many times they barely got any money over in Africa, the place that they said they were giving the money to. And it's, again, con artists, liars. You can't be gay, right? My new thing is you can't be gay, but you could lie and be a con artist in the church. God loves that. It's a joke.
Like what they do about that is that, in the early and late 70s, when these prosperity gospels started coming, most of them in America, they saw these African preachers as opportunity to make money. And then the African preachers saw the American preachers as opportunity to make money too. So it was like an exchange. So what happened, some of them in Africa here were sponsored to America for scholarship and all that for the training. So when they're coming back, they donate a lot of money. And then the preachers, the American preachers, keep some of the money and give some to the African preachers. The African preachers will say, oh, we're going there to preach the gospel to save Africans. And then when they come home, they build their own universities, they build their own schools, primary, they're all over the place here. That's what they do with the money. They don't really even help the poor. What they do is they just maybe buy some food stuff, buy some things, and just give to some people to show that they're doing charity. But the real deal, the real money, they use it for themselves. They buy cars, build universities and all that. So that's what they've been doing over the years, like kind of like money laundering kind of thing. So they use it as a cover-up. You see that? So they donate, they ask for donations. We are helping Africa. It's not as if Africa is poor. Africa is not poor. The problem we have in Africa is mismanagement of resources. That is the problem we have in Africa. And it stems from the leadership problem we have. So if we solve our leadership problem, then we can solve that problem also. So that's what they do. They use, the situation in Africa to make money. Like I made a post some time ago on my wall. Maybe I'll share it with you. I'll look for it. There's this Revised Standard Bible that they put a picture of 4 continents. You have America, you have Europe, you have Asia, and you have Africa. The 4 pictures that are on the cover, the picture of Africa you see there is one of a hut. But the one of Europe is these skyscrapers where leaders, skyscrapers and all that. But the one of Africa and Asia, Asia is a fishing village. And then the one of Africa is a typical village with a hut. Why did they do that? To show that Africa is poor, Africa needs help, so that they can use that means, to get donations, that they keep some for themselves, then give some to their collaborators, which is some of these African preachers and pastors who always go overseas. And they claim they've made wealth, is God that is blessing them, but people don't know how they're getting these monies through these sponsorship. At the time, maybe it was when the American authorities started so much investigation that it ceased a little, until maybe they started again and all that. So some of them, especially in the 70s, that was when that wave actually started till today. So some of them, they just come back home and build schools, build big churches for themselves. I don't want to call names. They're many. I don't want to call names and all that.
No, don't call names.
So, yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely interesting to know that, and they're con men, and they're very evil men, because as they're trying to tell their congregation and others, you can't do this, you can't do that. And another thing that gets me going is, and you hear it a lot, is you obey God, you get blessed. And next question I'm going to ask you, somebody ever even mentioned that to me again, ever, they don't. But I'm saying, if I want to challenge a Christian, what do you have to do to obey God? Because there's like 1,000 laws and commands in the New Testament, and there's over 600 in the Old Testament. So how are you able to obey God and make God happy? Anybody ever actually think about that? You really can't obey God. And then number one, you want to be a good human anyways, with God or without God. You don't want to murder people. You don't want to hurt people willfully. And, you being a human, right, and being sympathetic is important. But with that said,
morality is not a religious thing. It's not a religious thing. Anybody can be moral or not. And the thing is this, the modern preachers of today, because we are exposing them, they're finding it difficult to hold their feet down. So now they're preaching what they're calling Christology and all that, trying to preach, secularism in a way to align it with the Bible. Like, they say Christ is, just believe in Christ. That's all you need to do. You just believe, you don't need to keep any laws. You just believe and all that. That is the new trend, right? We're telling them something is wrong with all of that. So the truth is, you can't actually obey those laws, and those laws, they were not actually from God. Such laws cannot be from a God like that, like he's been described by them. No, such laws cannot come from such a God. And I tell people that, for instance, there are some laws in the Old Testament that were kind of no more in vogue in New Testament. And there were some things that were preached in the New Testament that are against what was believed in the Old Testament. So it's a clash. That's to tell you that it is not a God that is doing all that, because when you look at the laws of the New Testament and the laws of the Old Testament, it appears like the God was confused, kind of like trying to figure out, okay, what would be good for them, what would be right and all that. And we are told that this is an all-knowing God that knows everything good and everything right. So why would he now be trying to say, okay, like Paul was preaching, I tell you this, this is not a commandment from God, but this is my own commandment, do this and all that. So you were told to do this before, then this is what I now tell you. Now they try to separate Moses from God, that the laws of Moses were not from God. But the Bible says they were directly from God, that God wrote it with his fingers. So if they were able to tear that portion out of the Bible so that we don't see it again, they would do that, So there's a whole lot of confusion about all that, about morality. Like I always say, morality is majorly a personal thing. And then that is regulated by the generality of ideas, that are agreed upon by the society. So we are not supposed to, obey any God, because your God will not be my God. So why would the laws of the land, be from your God and all that? So which means somebody is trying to manipulate another person. So that is why we advocate for a secular society that is devoid of religious influence. You want to serve your God, serve him in your house, obey him in your house, for yourself. Don't bring it to the public. Don't use it to disturb us. Like for me, like if somebody asks me, what's your stand on, is the LGBTQ and all that? I tell people that, yes, naturally, the way we are built, when you look at yourself in reality, you know that this is me, this is who I'm supposed to be. But if somebody feels otherwise, it's his own personal thing. I don't have to put a law to stop him, to try to gag him and all that. That's his own personal thing. Whatever will come out of it, whatever bad effect or whatever, is for himself. So what I need to do, what society, what we should focus on is making the society more livable, improving living conditions for people and helping people to, live better lives, better wages and all that, make everywhere conducive. And then you can now think of, okay, what can we regulate or not? And you must seek the opinion of the people. Like I always tell my people, by the time the people are supposed to be the government, when what the people decide is what is supposed to be the government, because the government, those we call government, they came out from the people to represent the people. But when they get there, they close the door and they begin to do whatever they like. And they do it, together using the religious leaders to suppress the people, to manipulate and suppress the people. They work hand in hand. So I think it was in America, they said there's a separation of religion and state, separation between religion and state. But in reality, you don't really see, in reality, there's still some mix up somewhere and all that. So if we actually will solve these problems, I think full secularity is what we should go into. Let everybody serve his God in his own house. Like in Nigeria here, you see people in the morning, praying and disturbing the whole neighborhood with loudspeakers, prayer from the mosque or from the church and all of that. You worship your God in your house. You say God appeared to you, talk to you, not me. So why would you disturb me with him? If there's a hellfire or wherever, why are you concerned about me? If you love me so much, why can't you give me money to live well? You're thinking about what will happen after when I'm alive now. So why is your concern? You weren't there when I was born. Before I was born, you don't know where I was. So why are you so concerned about that? That tells you something, that these people just want to control people. If not, they're not really concerned. If they're really concerned, they will take care of the widows. They will take care of the orphans. Let them show us that. If they can do that, okay, we can serve your God. But until then, no.
Well, that goes back to Matthew 25, I think. Yeah, Jesus said, take care of the sick, take care of the needy, the poor. Take care of the sick, help the needy, help the poor, visit the prisoner. And he actually said that's how he's, again, going back to the Bible, right? And if you're not doing those things, you're basically going to hell, separating the sheep from the goats. So that's another, you don't hear that really being preached. And then I think if someone is preaching that, I think they're saying it's like a parable or something. It's not meant, Jesus didn't mean that you're going to go to hell, but he said that. It was
a parable. Like, there's no, even in the Bible, the word hell is from Norse mythology. It was a mistranslation of the word Gehenna. So there's nothing like hell in the Bible. Gehenna was talking about the valley where the bodies of those who will be killed during the war are going to be thrown into. And so it was about what happened in AD 70 and all that. So these dispensationalists or whatever you call them, that are trying to confuse the people. And that is the reason why I love what you're doing. And I'm very, very happy about it, that you guys are willing to actually support us in Africa, though we have similar problems over there, but it's worse in Africa, so that we intensify the campaign. Like, I'm looking forward to when you guys can come over, and lend your voice, because like sometimes I taunt some of my American friends that you guys brought this gospel that is destroying us here. So the gospel that will save us here, which is the truth of secularism, you guys got to bring it to Africa, so that the people will hear from you. Because sometimes when they hear from the Americans, they tend to believe more because they look at us as, who are you to talk to me and all that. We know you, we know, like they said about Jesus, you were born here, we know your father, we know your mother. Where did you get all this knowledge from that you got to tell us what to do and all that? So I'm happy about this, that this is coming up. So I tell people we need to intensify the preaching, because what pastors and all these politicians use, they use every platform to push their propaganda.
Yes.
They use the media. They are in the streets. They're in the media. They're everywhere to push the propaganda. And I discovered that when people hear something repeatedly for a very long time, they tend to believe it more than what they heard once. That's one thing I've come to realize. So this truth that we're sharing, I always tell my friends, we need to push it more. We need to take over the media. We need to put it out there all the time. And it's even having effects. For instance, I have people right now from Uganda, people from Kenya, from different places right now that have left Christianity since I started. They told me I'm no more a Christian. I have friends even around me in Nigeria that said, oh, I'm no more. Thank you for opening my eyes, because we need to tell people the truth so that they can actually, because when people begin to learn the truth and these con artists, they begin to lose followers, and then the society will begin to shape up better, because they have the people under their grip. They can manipulate them, they tell them what to do and all that. But when the people begin to know the truth about themselves, and then, for instance, somebody that used to get maybe $50 million a year from offerings and tithes and all that, is now reduced to maybe like $10 million. He will, calm down, and his influence will win. So I think if we can intensify this and make their influence to win, we become the new apostles that will tell people the truth. This time around, not the apostles of the corrupt gospel, but the apostles of the gospel of humanity.
Yeah, and I agree with you. As we're going to wrap up in a minute. Yeah, that's how I feel. My journey started when I became a Christian on my own, 2008. My heart was, I want the truth, and then I want to know, is this real? And I thought I had it, the truth. I thought it was real. But what's interesting is I wasn't done yet, because now I'm where I am. Now I feel like I think I got the truth. I think I got the truth. I think I understand it now. And I think I'm of a more moral person, because I'm not participating in with the con artists. I'm not sitting in the church spreading lies and my narratives, personal narratives is being preached. Like pastors preach their personal narratives, right? It's like they want people to be like them, follow them, and stuff like that. So so I think I got the truth now. You got the truth, and that's my desire, to spread the truth and help people not alone leave. My goal is not to. I don't want to say I want people to leave the faith, but find a healthier version. If you find the Jesus version of the Gospels, sticking within the Gospels, loving your neighbor, helping the needy, helping the poor, doing good, being sympathetic, relating to others, understanding others, trying to be nice to others, trying to maybe it's not easy to do, love, maybe not love your enemies, but in a way, oh, why is that person acting like this? Why don't they like me? Maybe they're going through a hard time in their life, right? That they reacted this way. Like I recognized that a couple of weeks ago with somebody, and I apologize for my actions, and things I've said to them. And that's my goal, is to get people to be better humans, nicer, more sympathetic. If you want to hold on to your Jesus, hold on to Jesus, but don't follow the American Christianity and obviously Africa Christianity. Follow the real Jesus you claim to believe in, which is in the Gospels. I think if there was a real Jesus out there and people are actually really following him, actually I would have no problem with it, because I think there's a lot of things that Jesus and the Gospels now is good. It's good stuff. How to live your life. And it's setting and like being free and just being good and being nice, because you want to be nice and want to be good and help others because you want to help others. So that's my message. But I'm glad you came on here. You are an enlightenment, like your podcast says. You have a lot of knowledge and wisdom, and you shared a lot. And it was great to get your perspective, and you're from Africa, so it was nice to learn some of the things that you shared with us. And yeah, maybe if you want someday, if you want to bring me on your podcast, let me know. You know, I think
For sure, I'll do that.
definitely.
Yeah, like you said, I have pastors, I have people who I raised as pastors.
Mhm.
They're still pastoring today. I have friends who are still pastors that were fellow pastors. So the only thing I tell them is don't follow what these people are doing.
Mhm.
Follow the what you believe to be the authentic gospel that is written
Mhm.
there, how Jesus lived,
Mhm.
as written in the Bible. So whether the story is true or not, that's
Yeah.
my personal thing. But for you that believes the story to be true, then follow the
Mhm.
story, follow
Mhm.
how true it is and all that, until one day, because I know that if you follow it truly, one day it will lead to a point where you will say it is enough. I'm done
Mhm.
with this whole thing.
Yeah.
Like for me, that was what happened to me. I was following it
Mhm.
truly, and I had enemies all around me. They hated me because they wanted me to be a con artist like them, charge money for
Mhm.
healing, charge money for do that. So they hated me because I was telling the people the truth that this thing, you don't need to give money to any god to receive
Yeah.
anything, to get anything. And I became an enemy to them. But I was still, riding on until I found the truth for myself and all that. So I believe that if people are true to what they're doing,
Mhm.
one day they will find the truth out of it. But if they're not true to it, it means they know what they're doing that
Mhm.
is wrong, and they're doing it for another purpose.
Yep. Definitely. Yeah. So thank you for coming on here, and I look forward to coming on your podcast someday. And
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to come on here and share your wisdom and insights on all this stuff. So yeah, have a good day.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. No problem. Bye. So yeah, that was Genesis, and I was thrilled to have him on there. And yeah, if you like our content, go on a podcast and click subscribe on our YouTube channel.